camera just for a moment and wave hello just so we can see you, and then you can turn your camera off again. I know most of you are probably eating lunch right now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us in this panel. Do we have any more people in the waiting room, or should we just go ahead and start? Ana Lourdes, is there any announcement from
I don't see anybody on the waiting room. No.
Okay, so maybe we should start sharing our, oh, very nice to see all of you. Thanks for turning your cameras on and putting a face to the names and the little squares that we see. It's always nice to see you. We understand that being in Zoom all day is tricky, so yeah, if you want to turn it off during the presentation, that's fine, but turn it back on and off as you see fit. Thanks, everyone. So welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the synergistic benefits of COIL. We're specifically going to talk about projects that we've done between UDEM, Universidad de Monterrey, and the University of Texas at Dallas. Today, the structure of this presentation is going to focus on presenting our COIL projects, but we're going to use the COIL projects as a pretext to share our learning and the things that we think go beyond the actual COILs. Before that, let me just introduce all our speakers. It's myself, Carlos Gonzalez Barragan from UDEM, Carol Lanham from University of Texas at Dallas, Victor J. Valcarcel, also from University of Texas, Dallas, and Marianne Meinecke, also from UDEM, from Universidad de Monterrey. Sorry, our structure for today is to present our COIL projects, COIL roadmap, try to give you some tips on how things that have worked for us, things that have not worked so well for us, and highlight the benefits to students, to faculty, and to our institutions, because as you'll see, this is one of those things that snowballs, and good things bring other good things, and what goes around comes around, and it multiplies. So that's basically our structure and our plan. Please feel free to ask questions either directly or in the chat, and we'll try to make pauses to take them as we go along. Without any further ado, we're going to start first with the project for Carol and Mary, and I give you the floor. Thank you very much for this. Oh, one more thing, Carol was traveling, so that's why she pre-recorded her presentation, but she's also here with us, so we're lucky to have her in both ways. Thanks, everyone.
Here we go. First project.
The COIL collaboration between the University of Monterrey and the University of Texas at Dallas began long before the actual projects that we're going to be showcasing here in this session. And that's because in February 2021, I was a new COIL coordinator at UT Dallas, and I was looking for guidance from someone with more expertise. Lucky for me, I found Brenda Garcia at UDEM, and she really helped me figure out a lot of things, how to find partners for myself and for my faculty colleagues, and also how to train those colleagues and what the process was in executing a COIL. And 1 year later, I was lucky enough to meet Mary Meinecke and get matched with her on a COIL project for my course, which was Introduction to Sociology. And because my students were studying culture as part of that class, we decided that we would have the students work on a cultural iceberg. This is something where students compare what they can see about a culture, the things that are visible, and also the things that they cannot see. And the COIL project gave them a chance to really learn about each other's culture at that deeper level, the part that's submerged below the surface. And fortunately for me, I also learned a lot of new technology and how to organize the COIL thanks to Mary's expertise. So she's going to tell you a little bit more about the technology that we used to organize the COIL.
Well, before moving on to technology, I would just like to briefly mention the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it also takes a village to raise a COIL, virtual exchange, and telecollaboration teacher. What does this mean? When you first try COIL, you're inexperienced and perhaps unsure of how to carry out the first program. You need the interaction with a community of people to go from an inexperienced COIL teacher to an expert COIL teacher. Here is where I'll make reference to a workshop that my colleagues and I gave on Tuesday on Google Zero to Google Hero. Well, the COIL community and the conferences can help you go from COIL Zero to COIL Hero, from inexperienced to expert. Who is the community of people you must interact with to become a COIL hero? Well, I'm going to make a mention of the village who trained and raised me. Brenda Garcia and the UDEM COIL department, professors and colleagues Amy McHugh, Z Jones, and Carol Cerulli Lanham, the SUNY COIL training courses, tech support, educational design, COIL conferences and courses, and many, many more. Lastly, all of this interaction is necessary for you to practice, develop, and improve your tech skills, research skills, improve student management and engagement, and develop your mentoring skills. Now, in the chat or open your mic, tell us who has mentored you or helped you for your COIL collaborations. Please feel free to share in the chat or if you want to open your mic. We'll just give a few seconds and then I'll move on to the technology.
So Bonnie is saying that her COIL coordinator.
Pidieron mucha comida y.
Hey, Kristen.
I'm seeing a lot of references to the coordinators in the chat, Mary.
Thank you so much, Carol. Let's go ahead and move on. Ooh, nice, thank you. Now, technology. Carol and I used a number of technological resources, free accessible resources that are available to all, from Zoom, WhatsApp, Google Sites, Google Drive, YouTube, Adobe Express, email, and Padlet. Personally, I'm a big fan of Google and all of its programs that it offers. Here's a look at an example of a website that's been created with our menu that we've divided up to guide the students from the kickoff session recording, the teams, calendar and activities, wrap-up sessions, and frequently asked questions. Here's also the teams page with the team list. The students can click and find their team and team information. And in addition, each team has their shared Google folder where they upload all of their activities that are available for the team and the professors to view. For example, if I was to click on Team 11, I would go to this folder in Google Drive and it would open and show us all of their activities, which only Carol and I could see, and the students who are on Team 11. Next, my colleague Carol will share with you about how we used Adobe Express. This is one that she taught me on how to use Adobe Express, which is a wonderful program.
After learning so much from Mary on how to organize the COIL, I was happy to share one of my favorite technology tools, and that's Adobe Express. So I'm not sure if you can read what's on my screen, but the types of projects you can do with Adobe Express include everything from a web page to an Instagram post. And here you see the website, it's free. And the website is express.adobe.com. And really, it requires no training at all. It is so easy to use that it is pretty much intuitive. So we have used Adobe Express for icebreaker videos. And here you see the one that I recorded, sharing my pictures and then doing a voiceover each picture. And after you record your voiceover for each picture, Adobe Express creates a video. Well, that comes in handy as well for any team videos that you assign for your COIL. So for our project, we asked them to produce a video as a team, and they could go in to Adobe Express, and each person would record their voiceover, their particular slides, and then at the end, they were able to create a video. You've also no doubt heard about Padlet, and we use the Padlet website to upload those videos, those icebreaker videos that we created using Adobe Express. But there was also more involved that I learned from Mary, and that is team management.
Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. Let me go ahead and advance that back so we can listen to the last part.
But at the same time, on which community, so to speak, choosing and
Here we go.
put them in the breakout rooms in the kickoff session. And we also assigned a team charter. And it's very important to get them all on the same page, so to speak, choosing a team name, sharing some of their strengths and weaknesses, and agreeing on which communication tools that they're going to use. But at the same time, all of these nuts and bolts still don't build community. And so Mary is going to talk about how we helped the students really bond on a deeper level than just deciding when they were going to meet and how they were going to carry out the project. So she's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Now, just to make mention, the team charter is a great way to get the students organized and motivated. And that one was actually passed on to me by my mentor, Professor McHugh. So as you can see, this COIL community just grows and grows and grows, and we keep passing on ideas to each other. As Professor Carroll mentioned, important part, essential part to any COIL, BE, or telecollaboration project or collaboration is the bonding and engagement. Professor Carroll mentioned the icebreaker, the Padlet page. Now, why is it so essential to get that team working together? We've got to break down those barriers. We've got to get them to create a friendship. I mean, they're communicating over Zoom or WhatsApp. Get them to create a closer relationship, improve their communication, to be able to find areas and interests that they have in common, to really help them to bond as a team. At the bottom is a quote that one of our students wrote at the end of the reflection at the very end of the project. This is what that student wrote. It's on the bottom. Even though we are from different cultures, there's still a lot of similarities between us, which we can bond over. There's always something they can find in common. Some ideas to help them bond. My personal favorite, because I'm a foodie, is to share a meal. I love food in all different forms and types. Another personal favorite of mine is to create a playlist of 10 songs in any language. You could also do it of 10 books, 10 movies that the students agree on. They could share their typical schedule or day, games, such as 2 truths and a lie. Or another way for them to bond and break the ice, share a picture of your pet or your desk. Be interesting to see how many desks are messy and how many are organized and clean, or challenges. If you're stranded on a deserted island, pick only 10 items to survive. Now let's take a moment and you can open your mics or type in the chat and say, what have you used for virtual team bonding? We would really like to hear your ideas in the chat to share with us and all of your other colleagues. Let's take a moment and look at the chat. Share your ideas.
Mary, going back to our previous question about who has helped the audience with their COIL projects, someone who's new to COIL said, being at this Congress has been very helpful. And of course, we're learning so much from one another. Mary was the one that created our website for us using Google Sites. And then thanks to her presentation on Tuesday, I know how to do it myself.
Oh, we have someone in the chat. Jose, describir pasatiempos, describing hobbies. Stephen, a collaborative story writing activity. Ooh, that's a really, I like those ideas. Good ideas. Anyone else? Thank you, Claudia, sharing an artifact and explaining why it's important. Thank you, Carlos. Last book you read, last picture or series saw. Look for coincidences. "20 more seconds if anyone wants to share something, and then I'm going to advance to the next slide. Ooh, thank you, Saulo. Philomena, Karen. So as you see, we have some ideas up on the slide, and there are also some really great ideas from your colleagues here in the chat to help you with your next COIL collaboration. This is the benefit of being at the conference, is sharing this. We're receiving benefits and getting new ideas. Like I said before, it takes a community to train and raise a COIL teacher. Let's go ahead and move on. Last point on our project, team management and engagement. Now, we know every class I always have a slacker or zombies, whatever word you like to choose, those students who are not participating. What we found, Carol and I, is really pay attention when assigning students to teams. For example, maybe I have 2 students who aren't really participating in class, so I make sure those students are on different teams. I try to avoid getting 2 slackers on one team. If I do have slackers or zombies, I've also personally called them and contacted them and say, hey, what's going on in your life? What's going on with the COIL? How can I help you, support you? This project is for your benefit. Take advantage of that. And that has also helped me to inspire and motivate the slackers or the zombies. And lastly, co-evaluations by their teammates. Teammates can evaluate each other and say, hey, their level of participation in the final project was high, medium, or low. These are mine. This is my evaluation of my teammates. And another tip, the last tip, but it's not here on the slide, since I use Google Docs, Google Slides, all of those for the COIL, I also go back and look at the history, who has collaborated, who has participated in that document. Now, I believe we're going to move on to our project number 2 with Vic and Carlos. So take it away to Vic and Carlos.
Thanks, Mary. Buenos días desde Dallas, Texas. O buenas tardes ya. Es un placer estar aquí. My name is Victor Valcarcel. I've been teaching at UT Dallas for about 6 years now, and I'm an economics professor. Mary, can you advance one slide and then we'll come back? I think this is my fault. I put them out of order. Thank you so much. So it's so great. Carlos and I, the economists in the group, were kind of remarking that we're very lucky to have two sociologists start the conversation, because you guys are experts at presentation and engagement, and in a way that economists sometimes focus too much on the facts. So we're very lucky to be sharing this panel with you too. And I found it really informative and interesting to get a lot of feedback from everybody in the panel right now about their own experiences with COIL. And I find it really interesting because I consider myself a newbie in COIL. And so the first question that comes to mind, maybe someone can share, and feel free to open up your mic or describe it on the chat, is how many of us have been teaching for quite a while, and now this virtual exchange is kind of a new thing after having taught for a while, and maybe there are some of us who are starting the COIL project as they start their teaching career. I wonder where we fall in those two categories, if somebody would like to share.
Okay, while we wait for people to.
Yeah. So Bonnie says 24 years teaching, 1 year of COIL. I'm certainly in the category of having taught a while and very much a newbie to COIL. I imagine there might be some people 32 years teaching, 4 years COIL. Wow. I imagine there might be a few people who are just now starting, and maybe COIL is part of their journey. Yeah, it looks like a lot of us are on that same boat, or having been taught for a long time and starting with COIL. So it's great to see that 30 years and just starting. Yeah, so I'm a newbie at COIL. I've been teaching money and banking since 2007, but I just basically began my COIL experience, my journey last year. And a lot of you were saying that your COIL coordinator has been a big factor. I can honestly say that I would not be here without Carol Shirley Lanham. She has been instrumental. We're very excited to be partnering. No, I'm still on that first slide, I'll tell you. Can we pull back? Yeah, thank you. So we're very lucky at UT Dallas to be partnering with UDEM, with Universidad de Monterrey, because the virtual exchange is very much almost a brand new concept for us at UT Dallas. In fact, Carol has been the champion of COIL at the university level for our whole university. UDEM has a long history of virtual exchanges, and so we've been very excited to kind of leverage this collaboration and kind of learn a lot from our friends across the border. So let me tell you a little bit about 12 years of COIL, years of teaching. Okay, interesting. So let me tell you a little bit about what we did for our project. I was very pleased. Part of the great advantage of having Carol is that I didn't have to do a lot of work in matching, and he found me the perfect partner. In the fall of 21, I had the privilege and the pleasure to start working with Dr. Gonzalez Barragan, and it was such an amazing experience that we decided to re-up it for the spring. And so we're going to discuss the spring perspective a bit more, but the idea is that I came in brand new. I had no idea what anything had to do with virtual exchange, but I had done simulations, in-class simulations of a monetary policy stance in my money and banking courses. And so the simulations typically involve a write-up, a presentation, some modeling, and all of this happening as a part of a project at the end of the semester. And I've done that a number of years. But then what really sparked the interest, something that I'd never considered once we started working with Carlos. And now, Mary, if you don't mind shifting back one slide. Sorry, I'm being difficult here. The spark there was that Carlos decided, well, I came up with this idea of why don't we kind of reorganize this to do a compare and contrast of an assessment of monetary policy and a monetary policy analysis, compare and contrast between the Central Bank of Mexico, commonly known as Banxico, and the Central Bank of the United States, commonly known as the Fed. And so that's basically what sparked our interest. The group then involves basically a simulation. There are 3 key deliverables, and I'll let Carlos talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. But in essence, the project spends about 6 months of the semester, kind of culminating towards the tail end of the semester, right before exams. And we have
6 weeks.
6 weeks, that's right.
Not
And we
months.
have, oh, I'm sorry, I said months. 6 weeks, yeah, 6 weeks. We have 1-page write-ups as an individual member and then as a group member. And then we have 15-minute presentations at the end. And Carlos can talk a bit more about that. So can we go to the next slide, please? And then one more, since I started there. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And so in essence, we have quite a bit of feedback on rubrics, and we provide them with quite a bit of background resources to get started researching their positions. And Carlos will tell you a little bit more about that. Can we go to the next slide, please? And so we first adopted this, again, as we said, in fall of 2021. I wouldn't have done any of this without Carol. Carol was just my hero. We refined it and conducted it again in the spring of 2022. Interestingly, in fall of 21, Carlos and I were both teaching money and banking. And so this is kind of we understood subsequently that it's kind of unusual for the exact same class to be using COIL, to be doing this COIL. Typically the COIL, at least our experience in UT Dallas, was more about different classes in exploring a nexus of connection between 2 otherwise separate classes. Carlos and I teach money and banking in a very similar manner. We have similar philosophies. We've been trained similarly, so it just made sense. But then in the spring, I don't teach money and banking, and so I teach intermediate macro. And so we had a slightly different class. I taught intermediate macro, and Carlos continued to do money and banking, but we were able to refine and conduct the experiment again. The participation in fall 21, which was our pilot project, was that Carlos had 29 students that where participation was mandatory, and my class was 57 that semester, but I had it optional, and we had 12 students participating. By this spring of 22, we both decided to make it mandatory, and we just kind of lucked out that we had similar size of classes. And so I think with this, I'm gonna turn it over to my good friend Carlos and give you quite a bit more specificity on our structure of the project.
Thank you, Vic. So building on what you just said, basically our COIL is a benefit from a previous COIL. We wouldn't be doing this had Carol not started looking for this partnership and on our end in UDEM if it wasn't for Brenda that was pushing for these projects. I mean pushing in the best way possible. I don't mean it in a bad way. Promoting is a better word, probably. Well, our COIL started because one day, last summer, I received an email. We get tons of emails from our universities, all of us, but this one said that they were looking for a partner for a COIL project in money and banking, and guess who teaches money and banking? So I was like, this is perfect, let's do this. And then we started talking about what can we do. So Professor Victor, like he told you, he had already an activity that worked very well with COIL, so we just had to make some minor changes. So we were very lucky in that sense. If you're starting your own COILs, look for an activity that you already have all the know-how of how it works and see how you can adapt it. That will save you a ton of time. And that's also one of the spillovers and benefits to us. For example, I had a traditional final project where they would do like a final paper. And I substituted that for this particular COIL, and it worked very, very well. Getting into the specifics of how we did our COIL, first we visited each other's sessions through Zoom. So Professor Victor visited UDEM and I visited UTD, well, our students at least, to present the project, tell them what is it about and how it works. manage their expectations, answer any questions before we actually start doing this. Then we did the icebreakers before actually assigning the teams so that they could introduce themselves and see more or less their expectations. We also gave them a little bit of say in their teams. For example, my students in UDEM sometimes are a little scared of doing a COIL because it's a different university, it's a different language. I don't know if it's probably the same in UTD, but the other way around. In this case, we gave them a little bit of freedom to choose who they wanted to partner with. So if I want to work with 2 friends from UDEM, we gave them that option to tell us they wanted to be with those 2 friends, and then we grouped them. And those 3 people would go from UDEM would go with 3 people from UTD. So the teams were international, but we gave them a little bit of say and a little bit of control in the process of the team building, a little bit different from what other faculty does. It is tricky. Building the teams is probably one of the hardest things that you will do, and it can help or hurt a lot in the development of this. So yeah, the icebreaker is here. We gave them a couple of questions. Can we go to the next, Mary, please? So here's the actual academic part of the COIL, where we give them about 3 or 4 weeks, depending on the semester, to actually do their 3 deliverables. There's 1 individual deliverable, 1-page policy memo, an American-style policy memo. Then there's also a group committee report. And then there's a 15-minute presentation that we do in a synchronous way in a Saturday. It's the only thing that we do on a Saturday. When we have students that say they cannot make it or something like that, we ask them to let us know like at least 3 or 4 days before, and to agree with their teams on how they're gonna be represented. So most of them did a video, kind of like what Carol did today, just as a backup in this case, but in some cases that has to do. And then of course we had to do the learning of what they take away. Can we go to the next? So these are all the instructions that we give them. I'm not going to go over them. You're not doing the actual COIL, but I just want to point out that they're very, very detailed. Can you just skim through this? These are all the instructions on what are our expectations and what else we need from them as they are going to work through their COIL. Can we go on, Mary, please? Yeah, so here's even more information of what we expect. We give them pretty much all the scaffolding for their project and how it should look. We try to make it very, very professional. And at first it seems a bit too much for the students, but we take them week by week. When we give them the 3 or 4 weeks to work, we actually ask for a weekly feedback form, or not a form, in this case, it's just a Padlet comment to make sure that they're on track and that they're happy with how they're doing. Because if we leave them for 3 or 4 weeks without doing much, then the chemistry or the contact starts lagging. So that's a bit tricky. Can we go on to the next? And yeah, we were very, very strict with the 15 minutes. We would actually stop them if it came to that. Can we go to the next? Here are more resources that we gave them. All of these are clickable for them. You're not doing the COIL, so it's not important for you, but the resources from both central banks. They did choose amongst their teams which bank they were going to do. In the fall, we had about half doing Bank of Mexico and half doing the Fed. This time, we had like 60% doing the Fed and 40% doing Bank of Mexico. But overall, regardless of which team, which bank they chose, they both all the students learned from both, and it was a comparative exercise that I think added a lot of value to our courses. Can we keep going?
Yeah, Carlos, we have a question from the chat that I think actually pertains really well to what you're talking about.
Correct. Maria Elena, thank you for the question. She's asking if the classes are synchronous or asynchronous. In UDEM, my classes are synchronous. Victor's classes are also synchronous. The COIL itself is mostly asynchronous, except for the final presentation, which we do on a Saturday for that reason. But speaking of linkages and synergies, we're actually In Udemy, we have a little bit more say sometimes on our schedule, so we're trying to see if we can actually coordinate the courses to have them on the same time, taking advantage that Dallas and Monterey usually are on the same time zone, so that we can do a little bit more intensive collaboration. So yeah, that's a great question, and another of the linkages and benefits that we have. This is just an example of the Padlet. If we can keep going, I don't want to take from anyone's time. These are the weekly feedback that we ask from them. Keep going. More Padlet, the final reflections. Keep going, please. And this is the example of the actual Saturday session. We had a lot of teams. I just want you to get a gist of how they look, an idea. Can we just go relatively fast through the next 10? Yeah, so this is a team with some graphs. Every team has a different style. We can keep going, Mary, like 2 seconds for each one, and that's fine. These are all the teams and how some presented with visual aids, some just started talking. We gave them some freedom as to how to do it. And it was quite interesting to see how everyone decided to approach this. And as you can see, everyone is dressed professionally. Expect a lot from your students and they deliver. That's also another thing that I can actually recommend. I think all of our students were very impressed with the actual quality of what they delivered in the end. And it's I mean, if you listen to them, and we have a video that I want to move on to so that we don't take time from them. Can we keep going to that? Keep going. Yeah, so this is, yeah, some took a more econ approach. Keep going. Okay, everyone's happy. The classic picture. Here is an excerpt of a team presentation. If you want to see the quality of things that they actually produce, we can play on it.
Good afternoon. My name is Eduardo Saldaña, and I will represent Chair Jerome Powell. The labor market shows signs of relief in recent weeks and seems to be gaining momentum. Therefore, my main concern for this meeting is inflation, since current geopolitical and health-related events around the world have put even more pressure on our economy. I consider it prudent to agree upon a careful, restricted monetary policy which ensures a soft landing in the medium term. Please, Vice Chair John Williams, state your position for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Trey Stratford, and today I'll be representing John C. Williams, Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve. Today's meeting provides the opportunity to examine the collective impacts of Russia's invasion on Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as get a solid understanding of economic and financial climates globally. An extremely tight labor market and massive amounts of reserves in the banking system threatens the effectiveness of monetary policy in the United States.
Shoot. Okay, I think they get an idea.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Sorry. No. I clicked on the wrong thing. Here we go.
Good afternoon. My name is
We're like halfway there, more or less.
And health-related events around the world have put even more pressure on our economy. I consider it prudent to agree upon a careful, restricted monetary policy which ensures a soft landing in the medium term. Please, Vice Chair John Williams, state your position for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Trey Stratford, and today I'll be representing John C. Williams, Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve. Today's meeting provides the opportunity to examine the collective impacts of Russia's invasion on Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as get a solid understanding of economic and financial climates globally. An extremely tight labor market and massive amounts of reserves in the banking system threatens the effectiveness of monetary policy in the United States.
Thank you, Vice Chair John Williams. Please,
I think we can go to the next in the interest of time, Mary. There's another short video.
Good afternoon, my name is Emily Jimenez, and I'll represent Governor.
And I'll move on.
Yeah, let's move on. The point here is so that you can see the kind of work that our students did. This one is like 30 seconds.
Note is that core inflation is also rising to kind of match it, which means that the inflation effect is being felt on actual goods and services outside of food and outside of energy in the Mexican economy.
Okay, and now, of course, the classic videos from the takeaways. We just a comment, we have permission from students to actually share this for academic purposes. So yeah, we're doing this. We can play both videos. They're like 30 seconds each again. Thank you, Mary.
Hi, I'm Manuel Igorito, and what I enjoyed the most about the activity we did was getting to know the Fed in deep. as well as improving and practicing my English. I also like being able to meet and share my knowledge with my teammates and learn different perspectives on monetary policy. I enjoy reinforcing my knowledge and learning new monetary strategies that will affect us all. And in conclusion, I loved collaborating with UTD and meeting amazing new people.
One takeaway from the COIL experience was determination. The determination of working with others to get to the finish line, no matter how intimidating it might seem. Second, I learned a lot from the Bank of Mexico and would like to learn more from it in the near future. Overall, I enjoyed this assignment and I am glad I participated in it. Thank you all.
Victor, do you want to close with the tips and then we round it up with lessons from everyone?
Sure. So as Carlos, thank you, Carlos. As Carlos suggested, it is highly structured, and if this looks overwhelming, it's kind of like that joke about how do you eat an elephant one small bite at a time. Carlos explained that you have 6 weeks, and that really helped us kind of spread out kind of the overall load, but then also coalesce. We were really big on not having a COIL project that runs throughout the whole semester. We may think about that in the future, but we wanted to do something that kind of it's structured around the 6 weeks, not the 6 months, the 6 weeks. And particularly because our project has a lot of so day-to-day application and real application to monetary policy, so much so that these projects that you saw a small excerpt on, took place a whole Saturday. All of the students, 3 UTD students, 3 UDEM students in each team, they all have 15 minutes, each team has 15 minutes. So that made for a 3-hour plus presentation in Zoom. And what's interesting is that we're able to do the presentation, and then the week later, they're simulating monetary policy. The week later, we have the actual central banks meetings. And so I actually received emails from my students 2 weeks later, and we got it right on the presentation. So that was pretty funny. But the important part here is planning is key. So while we tend to err on the side of overrule and over sharing of information, we feel that giving him a lot of structure early on kind of first sets the tone. And then it's important that we also provide office hours. We also cognizant of the marketing aspect of calling something office hours or automatically kind of turns off students. So we called it a workshop instead. And we did see a bit of participation on that the week before the presentations. Each COIL collaboration is different, but the second time really got easier for us. So there's definitely economies of scale as well. That we want to emphasize the importance of quick and effective initial contact among the students. So we want to give some organic, give them some organic way to kind of congregate and find like-minded individuals. But we also want to, for those that are more shy, to assure them that they will be working with a great team and will be facilitating that. So that actually takes quite a bit of the logistics early on the team facilitation. And so then I think for synergistic benefits to students, I think I think Mary kind of cut me off on a couple of bullets there, but I think we can turn it back. Okay, yeah, be available and have a local COIL ambassador. Carol, I would not be here without Carol. so I think
and Brenda.
And Brenda Adudem for sure. And so I think we can move on to that next slide. And I think that Carlos was going to take this back, or I can.
However you want, I can do it. Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, the benefits to students are amazing. There's a lot of collaboration here. In our case, it was relatively simple because, like Victor said, our styles were so similar, our syllabi were so similar that it was very, very automatic. And yeah, they learned hands-on from the Fed and from Banxico. In my case, I have another group from Money and Banking that did not do COIL, and I can safely say that the COIL group was at an advantage in terms of their knowledge of the Fed and monetary policy and rules and engagement. So the COIL project also generates a lot of engagement. Learning about other programs and experiences available to them during this, well, the COIL turned out like a natural extension of what they could do during the pandemic, but I think it's one of those things that will stay after the pandemic because the barriers to entry are relatively low and the benefits to students are super high. Another interesting aspect of this, I had 2 international students in my class. So these 2 students from France actually got to experience a third culture in their exchange program. So it's like an exchange within an exchange. So it was very, very interesting to see that. Another interesting thing, we sort of shared internship opportunities that Bank of Mexico circulated here for PhD students, and we circulated those to UTD students. And conversely, one of the alums from UTD, from Dallas, actually works at the Bank of Mexico office here in Monterrey. And we got his contact, and he was able to guest lecture in my classes, in both of the classes, the COIL and the non-COIL class. So as you can see, there are a lot of benefits to doing this. We never know exactly where this can lead, but that's part of the fun, not knowing where we're going in a good way. I mean that. But yeah, I can highly, highly recommend it. I see that there's a lot of benefits to my students, and I think they're better off for it. It's more work, yes, but if you take care of the planning, like Victor said, once the planning is all set, the execution, you cannot do a lot there. You're stuck with the COIL unless there's like an emergency or something like that. So the planning is the most important part, in my opinion. Next slide. And I think that's a video from Carol again.
Now that you've been able to see the extraordinary student projects and how our students benefited from the COILs, I get to share some of the good things that have come of our partnership with UDEM for us as faculty members. So clearly, here we are presenting on COIL as a team, and I have had the opportunity to also publish on COIL. I recently completed a book chapter that ended up being the first chapter in the book, which is called Academic Voices. I was also appointed as a Fulbright specialist, which will allow me to travel to another university and help them with COIL projects. And in fact, my dean and I just returned from Paraguay and Argentina, where we introduced some of our university partners to the COIL concept. And so it really does open doors. And I am on my way to Paris to teach a program abroad. And certainly COIL helped facilitate my opportunities to study abroad. And in fact, I then did a COIL project with my students as a pre-departure module. So we are finding that it opens doors for us as faculty members literally all over the world. But there's a benefit to our institutions as well. We are talking about faculty exchanges where maybe one of us goes to Monterrey to teach, and then we have someone from UDEM come teach at our university. We are working on a more formal agreement. We've been neighbors for a very long time, but do not have a memorandum of understanding yet. And COIL has opened the door to get that formalized so that we can collaborate in other ways. And we are looking at how we can bring some students from Mexico to come study for their doctorate at our university, and exploring the opportunities for the Good Neighbor Scholarship. That is a scholarship available to students who want to study at the University of Texas system. Students in Latin America can apply, and get their 1 year fully funded. And it's also renewable. So we do want to have more collaboration with our neighbors south of our border. And COIL has really enabled us to find ways to extend our collaboration beyond the virtual world.
Okay.
So as you can see, it goes full circle. It started with a collaboration from another group, and then it comes back to us. Professor Victor and myself, we're product of other people preaching and evangelizing about COIL. So I think what we can all do here and we can take away is that not keeping the COIL as the best kept secret to ourselves, but actually sharing it with other faculty members and getting engaged with it. And you'll see that we can have a lot of spillover effects and a lot of synergies that we can generate. With this, we conclude our COIL presentation from this panel. And I don't know if we have a few minutes for additional questions. We've been answering questions on the panel and also live, but I don't know if we have like 5 minutes or so to take questions.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. Shall I read them out?
Yes, please.
¿Cuánto tiempo tomaron para la programación del curso y tiempo de duración? How much time did it take to organize and program the course? And how long did it last?
So if it's for the monetary policy, I think Carlos kind of covered that we began with something that was already somewhat done before. And that's, I think, this was actually a good advice from Carol early on. Don't reinvent the wheel the first time around. You do something important or big. And so, I mean, Carlos, what do you think? It was the preparation was somewhat streamlined from what we would have been. And then, as I think, as we mentioned, the COIL takes over about roughly the last 6 weeks of the semester for both of us.
We probably spent about an hour a week for like 3 weeks exchanging ideas on how to proceed. Yeah, more or less.
We have.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know.
I can take this one. So I have one, el curso from José from Perú. El curso les implicó trabajo extra del normalmente les habían asignado en sus universidades. So José is asking if COIL involved more work above and beyond what the university would require. And speaking, you know, this obviously is COIL specific, but for our own project, at least from my perspective, it was very streamlined. It was it really did not involve much in the way of extra preparation or extra time. Having said that, again, the importance of having something already in the works that we can kind of relatively fast transition into a virtual exchange was key. So if we had to do this from scratch, this would have taken quite a bit more time. So in essence, the preparation was really minimal. It's just an extra commitment of a 3-hour Saturday for the final project, which I think students really appreciate because they get to dress up and they get to speak formally. So, and they do really well.
Thank you, Vic. Let's go with one, Professor Figueroa. Would you like to open your mic and ask a question? I see you have your hand up. You can ask it in Spanish or English. Go ahead and we'll translate.
Yo tengo una pregunta. ¿La puedo hacer?
Adelante.
Bueno, mi nombre es Jerry Uceda. Ahí está el nombre de mi esposa. Entonces no he podido cambiar el nombre. Pero soy profesor de la Universidad de Honduras, de la UNA, especialmente de un centro regional en Comayagua. Tengo más de 22 años de trabajar como profesor con una experiencia COIL, como estaban diciendo ahí. Tuvimos hace 2 años con la Universidad Tecnológica de Bolívar en Colombia la experiencia COIL. Ha sido muy bueno. Hicimos en la asignatura de matemática financiera en el tema de cómo preparar la cuota nivelada de un préstamo, cómo elaborar la tabla de amortización de préstamos con pagos anticipados, vencidos, diferidos. Y fue muy buena la experiencia entre nosotros los profesores. Tuvimos la oportunidad de dar clases a los profesores, a los alumnos en Colombia, en mi caso, y la profesora de Colombia pues dar clases en nuestra universidad aquí en Honduras. Aparte de eso, hicimos un trabajo en conjunto con los estudiantes sobre las tasas de préstamos para vivienda, tanto en Honduras como en Colombia. Y fue muy interesante porque pudimos hacer una comparación y ver qué cosas ellos hacen allá en Colombia y que son buenas, que nosotros podemos aprender. Lo mismo aquí nosotros y ellos allá aprendiendo de nuestras experiencias. Fue muy bueno el intercambio de sílabos, comparar el contenido de los sílabos, los textos que usábamos cada uno de nosotros y aprendimos mucho, tanto de ellos, de nosotros como nosotros de ellos. Principalmente, en mi caso, aprendí más de ellos porque la iniciativa de esta experiencia COI fue de ellos, de la Universidad Tecnológica de Bolívar en Colombia. Tanto fue bueno que 2 años después, o sea, ahora en el 2020, la universidad elaboró un artículo sobre esta experiencia y ha sido muy interesante para ellos, en el caso de nosotros, para la Vicerrectoría de Relaciones Internacionales, precisamente por esta experiencia con ellos, es que me invitaron a mí a participar en este congreso. Tengo una pregunta, ¿cómo podrían, bueno, quiero no dejar de contarles también que producto de toda esta experiencia, ellos vienen de Colombia a Honduras a estar una semana con nosotros en nuestra universidad para descubrir nuevas oportunidades para esta experiencia COI. Ha sido un boom, como decimos aquí, el estar fortaleciendo esta experiencia COI en diferentes disciplinas, no solamente en la parte de matemáticas financieras, sino que en otras disciplinas.
Muy bonita experiencia. Muchas gracias por compartir. ¿Tiene alguna pregunta?
Sí, ¿cómo a eso iba? Gracias. ¿Cómo podemos hacer los contactos con DEN para que podamos tener esta experiencia con ellos también? ¿Algún contacto que podamos tener, un número, un correo, un número de teléfono para que podamos hacer con otras universidades del mundo nosotros aquí en Honduras? Gracias.
Bueno, la pregunta viene para UDEM, entonces me atrevo a responderla. Hay varias formas de hacer contactos, que creo que es el fondo de la pregunta. I think the gist of the question is, can we make linkages and how to find partners? There are some COIL partnerships and COIL fairs where we can do that. And there's also opportunities for direct linkages with COIL sponsors. En UDEM, por ejemplo, UDEM, Brenda García es la que se encarga de todo lo que tiene que ver con programas internacionales y ahorita la división de negocios, que es donde estaría su materia, por ejemplo, matemáticas financieras, es de las que más COILs tienen. Entonces, creo que escribirle a Brenda García para buscar una oportunidad de posible colaboración COIL sería el camino correcto en caso de que le interese UDEM, pero hay un montón de ferias y lugares donde se puede hacer esto. En México también está la AMPEI y ahí lo podrían contactar con un montón de universidades en México que le podrían también servir de linkage. Y bueno, en esta ocasión, en un proyecto colaboración entre latinoamericanos, pues no habría problema de idioma. Thank you so much.
There's also, a few days ago, John Rubin presented a COIL page. There's a recorded session where he presented a new COIL contacts. Hay una página, hace unos días John Rubin presentó una página donde hay una lista de universidades. Creo que lo presentó el martes o miércoles.
Carol has just shared a link here, coilconnect.org.
Anyone else would like to make a comment or open their microphone, or should we go to the questions in the chat? What do you prefer? I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Well, there is one question here in the chat I don't think we answered. The question was, did you change your course? Did you change your course? And I'll take that one. Did I have to make changes in my course? With Carol and I, we have completely different courses. I had professional writing and Carol had introduction to sociology. So I did make a few adjustments in my course on activities. And Carol, did you make any changes in your course?
So it was a new project for my course. I hadn't taught that course in many years. So when I was planning the course, you and I talked and came up with the idea of the cultural iceberg. And so, you know, I normally would assign a project, and making it a COIL project just makes the whole experience much richer.
I just want to build on what Carol said and some advice that I got from you the first time we discussed a possible COIL. And when you introduced us, Victor and myself, you said to start with something relatively simple, something that we can manage. Even it doesn't have to be that big. It turned out to be super complex in our case, but it didn't have to be like that. It can be just a small part of your course. The important thing is to have that linkage, that connection, and to have fun, to give students something to remember, something that they can actually say, oh, I did this and I'm happy that I did it. So that's something that Carol told us at the beginning. And I think in our case, given that everything was very automatic, it fell into place. But had it been a different class, because many courses are like very completely different disciplines, find something relatively small and make sure that you get your objective of the international experience and also your academic objective, but with a simple activity if that is the case and if that works for you. It doesn't have to be super complex.
And I agree 100% with that, and building on that. So that was great advice from Carol, that, you know, it doesn't have to be a revolutionary. The important is to take that first step. And, you know, we took that to heart. But it ended up being quite structured, but and substantial, in my opinion. But the important thing for me also was that now I have a fast friend and fast and good friend and a partner for the long run. So in other words, you know, you have a couple of times running, and then you're off to the races in terms of expanding in different ways and expanding the COIL. It doesn't have to, you know, you can start small and build. That, I think that's an important aspect, an important advantage of these virtual exchanges.
I wanted to speak just briefly to the benefits, well, specifically to the coordinators out there as you're trying to convince faculty. How are you going to get them to do the extra work? They mentioned I was traveling, and I mentioned in my reporting I'll be teaching in Paris in just a couple of weeks. And when I tell my faculty colleagues, like, this really opens doors for you to go teach abroad, that's a real incentive, you know, and I'm living proof of it. And I love the pre-departure module idea, because we plan to bring the students together once we're in Paris, that they've already, you know, they've had a chance to get to know each other and before they ever left home. So I really like that combination with study abroad.
Is there one last question from anyone? We know that we are at the edge of our time, and we wanna respect your agendas. Of course, we can stay if you want, but no. Well, we sincerely hope that you have taken a little bit of our learning from this. Like I said, we wanted to showcase our baby, our coils, but at the same time, the main project or the main thing that we wanted to showcase were the tools and our experiences and the benefits and the tips that we could give you. And we hope this has been a good use of your time, being productive. And thank you so much for spending an hour with us and for listening to all of us. I think I speak for the four of us when I say that we're open to hearing from any one of you, should you be interested in reaching us. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you. Ana Lourdes, is there a final announcement?
Yes, just on behalf of Latin Coil, we thank everybody for your participation and to the conferences that make this such a great session. I'm just sending, we have some recognition for you guys if you have a moment, or do you want me to send it by email, because I know that we are a little bit over time right now. But I just want to thank everyone for your participation. I'm sending by the chat an evaluation. If the attendees can help us to fill out, it will be greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much, Ana Lourdes. And with this, we conclude our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Muchas gracias a todos.